In this video, I will show you how to use a slip stitch to sew your binding onto your quilt. This is the final step before your quilt is complete. As you can see, I've already sewn using the sewing machine the binding onto your quilt top. Now we must flip the binding using that folded edge and turning it towards the back of your quilt. I'm not using pins to secure this in place, but you could do that if you were more comfortable. So to begin the slip stitch, take a needle and thread, and the thread that I'm using is a coordinating color with my binding, and I've tied a knot at the end of my thread, and I'm using a 2-ply thread so that the stitch is more secure. As you can see, I've already started this process. And the slip stitch is nice because it's a hidden stitch and it looks like a nice clean edge when you're finished. So taking the needle, come up through the back side of the binding that you've turned over to the back side of your quilt. And you're just catching a few strands of the fabric. Pull your thread all the way through so that the knot is hidden, so that it's between the binding and your quilt back. And you can fold the binding edge over, and you're going to make a stitch directly across from where your thread came up onto your quilt back. And you'll use about 1/4 of an inch stitch. Now the needle is just going through the top fabric here. It's not going all the way through. This is what allows the stitch to be hidden. So pull your thread all the way through, again using about 1/4 of an inch stitch. So now the stitch is on your quilt back. Take the needle and come up through the binding, and you're going to make another 1/4 of an inch stitch, and use the fold as your guide. The needle is just going through the binding there. Pull your thread through and tighten it. And you continue this all the way around the outer edge of your quilt. Now I'll show you how to create a knot when you've reached the end of your thread. I simply go across to the other side from where your stitch is, catching a couple strands of the fabric and coming up through the binding. And before you pull it all the way through, you're going to use your needle and go through the loop. And you're going to do this 2 or 3 times to create a knot. Again, pulling your stitch all the way through, going through the loop first. There you've created a knot. And that is how you sew a slip stitch to complete the binding on your quilt.